Today we're here with Jimmy Adams. I met him at the City Gala, and he went from being the vice president of a hedge fund that had over $30 billion under management to creating a Netflix documentary and movie, kind of combined together. It's more of a movie, it's a story, but it kind of is a true story that details his life from going from that position to working at a restaurant, a Waffle House. It's called Waffle Street. I just watched it last night. It's an amazing movie on Netflix that I recommend everyone to check it out. And he also has some great tips and ideas in terms of his transformational experience and his personal hero's journey from going from such a hardcore, intense position in the financial crisis to being someone who went through a process of self-discovery. And I thought it would be an awesome chance to interview him on two fronts. First of all, everyone on this channel is about trying to discover their identity, that identity level change process in terms of their personal life and their business life. And what Jimmy did here is he went through basically both of those processes and then detailed it in a movie. And I thought that was so cool because I myself have always been fascinated about the prospect of doing something similar. And I'm doing it now with our musical. But Jimmy, thanks so much for joining us today. I think this is really awesome to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Nick. I appreciate it.
I'm really curious about you, first of all, maybe informing everyone a little bit about your story, your journey from your point of view, and also how that is a little bit different from what was seen in the movie.
Sure. Well, when would you like me to start? At what point in my life?
Well, I guess let's start from, I guess you graduated from college, you did MBA program, you went to Wake Forest, you did an MBA, you joined a financial firm. Let's start there.
Okay, yeah, so I got out of college. I figured out probably my sophomore year of college I wanted to get into finance. I really liked investments, so I worked for two life insurance companies. And I was working at the second life insurance company. I was going to grad school at UNC Chapel Hill, and actually got laid off as a result of a merger there. And fortunately, through the network I had at UNC, I was able to get this job at this big asset manager in Durham, North Carolina. And spent 3 years there. The first year was great. The second 2 years, we were basically just trying to bail the water out of the ship, before it went down, and saw the beginnings of the financial crisis in 2007, early 2007, and rode that all the way through January '09 when I was laid off. And I'd spent the previous, 2 years basically apologizing to large institutional clients about, why they were losing so much money. My boss and I serviced about $20 billion in assets, major central banks we had as clients, major national pension funds. I mean, big institutional money. We had a lot of premier academics at our firm, and we were considered a pretty major league shop. And so to go from a situation like that to the firm really kind of melting down along with the rest of Wall Street, it was pretty harrowing. And I think the thing that really disconcerted me the most was the fact that we knew that there were problems in the mortgage market, pretty serious ones, as early as March of 2007, or I'm sorry, March of 2006, but we underestimated the magnitude. So there's a lot of life lessons just in that itself, that you can get the story right, but if you get the magnitude wrong or the timing wrong, nothing else really matters. So when I was laid off in January of '09, I was just burnt out on finance. There weren't that many jobs, and I was disconcerted by the fact that I'm working around all these really smart people, of national renown. Our CEO was an old academic colleague of Ben Bernanke, who was then the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And it's like, how did we miss this? How did the Fed miss the size of this problem? So I said, well, I can't go back into finance till I figure some of this out, because the emperor has no clothes. Nobody knows how the system works, and I'm just sick to my stomach. So I went to the state unemployment office, and sort of the cliche thing they show in the movie, right? You're sitting there, and I did not fit the demographic profile of most of the folks in the unemployment office. And the line that he actually says, my character says in the movie, he turns to the guy next to him and he says, "So, what mortgage derivatives did your former employer invest in?" I suggested that line to the producers, or the directors rather, because it was going through my head. I wanted to make small talk in the office, and I came this close to actually saying that to the guy next to me, but I couldn't because it was so somber in there, and everyone was so melancholy, and there were people there with their kids, and it's like, man, these people are in more dire financial straits than I am, and oh, by the way, it was firms like mine that put all this money into housing that caused this boom and this bust. That's the reason why there's so much unemployment now. And I talked to the guy that was running the state office, and he was telling me that they were about to run out of money and had to go to Raleigh, the state capital, for more money. So it was just a lot of guilt and confusion. And I said, you know what, I can't take unemployment. My wife was working as a nurse. Yeah, I lost money in the stock market, but I didn't need it, and it caused a lot of soul searching. I'll put it that way. And so I said, well, what am I going to do? I tried to get a female friend from work to let me into a Mary Kay party. I wanted to know if maybe a guy could hack it as a Mary Kay salesman. Just try it. Like I was above trying anything, and I thought, maybe I can get some good material to write about. And she was having none of that. I applied to McDonald's. They took my application. I talked to the franchise owners. They wouldn't take me on. They never said why. And so I'm thinking, gosh, if I can't get a job at McDonald's, I got a serious problem, So
I applied for a job at McDonald's and I couldn't get it as well but that was when I was a kid.
Is that right? Well, yeah. Did they give you a reason why?
No reason.
Well, yeah, I never heard back, and I placed a couple of follow-up calls, but I never got an answer. So eventually I was driving down Fayetteville Road in Durham, North Carolina, and I saw the Waffle House, and I thought, well, I'm just going to go for broke here. So I walked in, and 15 minutes later, I walked out with an application, and sure enough, just like they show in the movie, it was like a 3x5 card, and it had 4 questions on them, one of which is, have you recently been convicted of a felony, or have you been, are you on parole? And that sort of set the tone for a lot of things that were depicted in the movie. I was the only person working on the weekend graveyard shift that had not spent time in a state or federal correctional facility. Most of the guys I was working with were former drug dealers, mostly cocaine. They'd get incarcerated in New York or New Jersey and then transferred down to the state penitentiary in Butner, where incidentally Bernie Madoff is currently serving his sentence, and the big financial crook with a Ponzi scheme. And then they get paroled, and where do you work when you get paroled? People aren't tripping over themselves to hire ex-convicts, so it turns out that the 2 places that normally, regularly hire felons or ex-convicts are Burger King and Waffle House. And when you come into Waffle House, they really don't want you waiting on the Sunday after church crowd, so they put you on 3rd shift, which is 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. After all the bars close, last call, everybody's pretty sauced. They come to Waffle House for hash browns, grits, and some after club social interaction. So it got to be pretty colorful, and you get a lot of good anecdotes working in that environment. And I was fortunate to work with some great people, really interesting people, and beyond sort of all the humor, you realize that a lot of what happens in life is sort of a function of circumstances beyond our control. And I say that because a lot of the guys I worked with, grew up in less than affluent circumstances in, New Jersey, or one guy was from Brooklyn. And, they're just young guys trying to hustle and make money, not dissimilar from a lot of the bond salesmen I sell. I used to buy bonds from at the insurance company. And you wonder, with the same temperament, would these guys have worked on Wall Street had they gone to prep school and had a different, academic pedigree and family background? And just got me thinking about the difference in sort of mistakes that white-collar folks make that cost society money versus the mistake that, blue-collar folks make that cost society, but they end up going to jail for 20 years. And so there's a lot of philosophical introspection as well. And, in as much as I, occasionally felt sorry for myself, or despondent about what had been a very promising trajectory at this firm, again, we weren't doing anything crazy. I worked with honest people. How did the rug get pulled out from under my feet? And then you compare your lot in life with some of these guys that were, good people that were just trying to start over and atone for mistakes they'd made 15, 20 years before. And, it's hard to not become humbled by being in that situation, interacting with those folks. So I think that was my big takeaway, is just, you can't get on a pedestal, because sooner or later life's going to knock you off of it. And I think to some degree, I was lucky that it happened to me earlier in life rather than later. I saw a lot of people that had worked in finance, spent careers in it, that lost literally in excess of $10 million when the firm went down. So I'm grateful for what I learned, and the book, going through this whole process of writing the book, trying to find a publisher, and then having it adapted to the screen has been an adventure unto itself. So I got a lot more than I bargained for when I walked into Waffle House that day. I never would have foreseen this whole trajectory. It's taken me to my current job now, 8 years later, which again looks very promising. But once bitten, twice shy, right? So I feel that the whole experience has really been good for me on a lot of levels.
So one of the things that you mentioned was that you like the idea of potentially just trying something out, like working at Mary Kay, because it's something that you could write about. Does that mean that you were thinking about writing a book about this from the very beginning? Kind of like your transformational journey?
Yeah, I did, actually. I know some people are a little bit, skeptical about that, because I was writing a lot at the time. I was blogging about financial matters. I write an annual Christmas letter at my wife's behest. It's gotten to be my favorite part of the holidays. This started about 12 years ago, and after the second or third installment, it blossomed from a recap of everything we'd done over the course of the year to all of these, ruminations about, history or economics or theology or whatever. So I really enjoy expository writing. I thought, well, maybe this is a reasonable sabbatical, or a good time to take a sabbatical from finance and kind of see if I can do something book length. I had written, some reasonably long essays and things, but I wanted to see if I could churn out, a full book and make something that would be entertaining and digestible. So yeah, it was there was that thought going into it, sure.
I mean, I think about, guys like Forrest Gump, and him mowing the lawn or trying these, jobs he doesn't have to do because he became a millionaire at the end, right? And I'm thinking about you because your academic background, I mean, you could have reached out to your alumni network, you could have reached out and gotten so many different jobs, but it sounds like, makes me wonder if you chose this position at Waffle House, and to dedicate your time to it because you were trying to get something for the story, and also something new, something to inspire you, but in a very unusual way. Is that kind of like what you were going for, just trying to jump into something unknown to try to find a hint of light or inspiration?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. It's funny, I was reading yesterday they talk about the hermetic journeys that people take, like Thoreau, retreating to Walden Pond, where you're kind of away from everyone. And I wasn't doing a lot when I wasn't at Waffle House. I was just kind of exercising and writing. And I needed that time to myself to just ponder and read. I was reading voraciously as much economic theory and history as I could get my hands on, trying to figure out, how does this system work? I'm supposed to be a professional and nobody understands how it works. So I got to go back to the drawing board, and there's some real value in that. But the other thing is, doing things that you're not accustomed to, it really does force your brain to engage in ways that is very beneficial. Like Waffle House in particular, you ever eaten in one?
I don't think so.
So what's there are many unique aspects of the Waffle House, but one thing is, you don't when you take somebody's order right on your ticket, you don't just give that to the chef. You actually have to call out the meats, the hash browns, and they pull everything out of the freezer as you call the meats, and then they drop the hash browns onto the grill as you tell them, and then you tell them to mark the plate, and they basically put this coating system on the plates with little condiments, and that tells them what to grill. And you just have to be on top of everything, because you have to know how to read and code the plates. It's not like as robotic as McDonald's. I want a Big Mac, and I push the Big Mac picture on the keypad, right? There's actually a lot of cognition that goes into this, and then you multiply that by the fact that it's basically 50 against 5 when the restaurant doors explode at 3 in the morning, and the fact that everybody's drunk and all want to be served at the same time. And I mean, you really got to be on top of your game, and it's incredibly challenging. So yeah, it was a really hard job. I'd say in many respects it was the hardest job I ever had. And the thing that really struck me is a lot of my interactions with my colleagues afforded a lot of economic insights, meaning they understood a lot of things from a common sense standpoint that reinforced a lot of the economic theory I was reading. So what I tried to do in the book was use these vignettes, and everything in the book that happened is real, by the way, and most of the movie is. I tried to use them to reinforce the economic lessons I was learning. So I got a lot more than I bargained for. I just thought that I would go in there, get some interesting exposure. I didn't know I was going to be put on third shift. I didn't ask for that. I had no idea what was going to happen when I walked in there. And I mean, you just get more than you bargain for. I don't walk into Waffle House thinking I want this to be a movie on Netflix, right? I mean, if you do that, it's never going to happen, and I tell you, you're crazy. But it's just one thing after another. So I would tell anybody, I was 31 when I got laid off, and I remember just pulling the hash browns out of the dish pit on my 32nd birthday, thinking, if they had done like a senior superlative thing in high school, most likely to be working in fast food, cleaning out the sink at age 32, that wouldn't have been me. I was a salutatorian in high school, admittedly a small class, but I was a pretty respectable academic and professional record, and it just goes to show that crazy things can happen to anybody, right?
Well, I mean, even in the movie, your perspective was very different from the very get-go than everyone else. It was the concept that you were working to become a franchise owner, and I guess I was curious, was that your goal when you were trying to figure things out? You're like, this would be really cool if I could do that?
I actually did mention that in the book. I talked to the guy that ran the local McDonald's, and maybe that's why I didn't get the job there, as he thought I was trying to compete with him or something. But, you got to consider the state of finance at the time. And actually, even in the 8 years since then, the industry's changed so much. It's very heavily regulated, and a lot of asset management has consolidated as fees have come down. So, you got the sense that the world was never going to be quite the same. All these hedge funds that were around 10 years ago are no longer there. The low-hanging fruit's sort of been picked, so to speak. So you find out what some of these guys that own these McDonald's franchises make, and they do like really well for themselves. Now you got to totally give yourself to it, but I got kind of sick of working for other people, getting great performance reports, and then getting laid off as a result of a merger or an implosion that came, kind of out of left field. So, yeah, it does sort of, I think, cultivate any entrepreneurial instincts that you have. It's like, well, if I work for other people, I'm doing a good job, and even though they recognize it, something beyond their control or mine can change the status quo for the worse, I got to take control of my life. The other part of it was, I figured that if I did this, things could only look up from there, right? Like working the graveyard shift at Waffle House is not like the job that people are most desiring of when they come out of college, right? Nobody gets a 4-year degree or an advanced degree hoping to work at Waffle House, waiting on drunks, or at least very few people that I know of. And my thought was, well, whatever I do from here, whether it's, going back to driving a forklift like I did in high school, or, working in a, in a glue factory, right? The world can only look rosier from this day forward. So that was my thought, is that you get, sort of, Joe Rowling had made some comment about that, that I have to paraphrase her, but she talked about how when she was a single mother, working on Harry Potter, like completely broke, like when you get broken down to nothing, that becomes sort of your building block and your foundation, right? Like it can only get better from here. So that was part of my thought process too. As far as becoming a franchisee, I think I only had to work at the restaurant about 60 or 90 days till I realized I did not have the temperament for food service. And yeah, so I was certainly considering that as an option, although I never got as far along as they depict in the movie with me trying to buy the franchise. That was a plot device that the directors and screenwriter introduced. I think it comes off pretty well. For me, the big entrepreneurial endeavor was trying to get the book completed, published, marketed, and then going through this process with the screenwriter to get the film produced and then distributed. And so that's been my big entrepreneurial endeavor for the last 5 years.
Yeah, so were you also somewhat involved as an executive producer in pretty much everything from like getting the coordination of all the aspects of the art itself in terms of like the way things would look and the drama and all the creative elements? Were you able to participate in all that as well?
I should give a little bit of a timeline. I finished the book, the first edition, in July or August of 2010 we published. And I think it was September or October of that year that I started working with the screenwriter. It turned out that one of my publisher's other authors was a screenwriting editor. And so she said, we got to adapt this thing. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, here we go. Pie in the sky. But, what the heck, I'm this far into it, why not? And so she adapted it pretty quick. The first draft, it was pretty true to life. And, we had gone to a screenwriting convention in Beverly Hills I went to with her where it's like the screenwriters meet potential producers. And I'm thinking, what am I doing out here? This is crazy. This is never going to happen, right? And she really believed in this thing. And God bless her, within, I think, 2 years, it took her 2 years till she found the right partner. And it was just that whole 6 degrees of separation. She knew somebody who knew somebody whose brother was this guy, and eventually we got to this producer, John Kelly, who was this named producer. And again, I apologize. I could talk at length, for hours about this whole process, but
yeah, I'm very fascinated by all this because this idea of making a movie on Netflix is something that my business partner and I have been talking about for over 5 years. So I think this is awesome. You could talk as much as you want about this.
Well, I can give you some tips sort of economically from, what I've learned or what I'm learning, because I don't know ultimately, how remunerative this is going to be in one way or another. And part of that's because the distribution model has changed so much between Netflix and Redbox. The indie film business has changed as a result of Netflix, meaning they are producing their own content.
Yeah, I could see that. And I guess you launched your movie quite recently though as well, right? Just like in the last couple of years?
We filmed in August of 2014 in Utah, and our directors, editors spent about 9 months in post-production working through all of these test audiences. They found my character wasn't sympathetic enough, so they recut the film and added some voiceover, and then he scored better with the test audiences. So they were really diligent in iterating till they got to, I think the most sympathetic protagonist they could, which by some measure still isn't that sympathetic when you read some of the comments. But there were people that wanted the guy led away in manacles, that were pretty bitter after 2008. and part of that's because when you create this film, you what's the protagonist's journey? And so the director said, well, can we have him do something kind of ethically dubious? And I said, well, I never did that. I said, but here's something a guy across the hall from me did, with the firm. Would this make sense? And they said, yeah, let's have him do that. And so that got in the movie. And, you sort of play it up a little bit in terms of the shadiness of it. But there are people that say, oh, well, you did that, and ergo you need to go to jail. So, I'm willing to sacrifice for the sake of a good story. So it doesn't really bother me. But where I was going with this is we have this movie, and then so you go to these various film festivals, and you try and get as good a buzz as you can, and solid audience response. And it was a good family movie, and that was the sense that we had, that it was it was a quality sort of PG movie. Maybe it would have done better on television. Maybe that's sort of the optimal buyer, but ideally, I think if I had to do it again, or if I was pursuing this economically, with more of an economic bent, you basically want to have the buyer at the end. You don't want to. It's like building a home when you have a buyer versus building it on spec and then trying to sell it. So that's the difference, with doing an independent film, is that whether your buyer is a Lionsgate who's going to do a theatrical, or whether it's Lifetime or Hallmark or whoever that's going to just show it on their TV, what amount of cash you're going to get versus your production budget, and you can make money that way, as opposed to just building this thing and saying, okay, who wants to bid on it? What distributor wants it? So we got I think a pretty good audience. We have, again, John Kelly, our name producer, got it in front of Lionsgate and like Sony Pictures Classics, wherever. Would you want to do something with this? And part of the problem with a lot of these movies that would have even, I think, found theatrical distribution 10 years ago is that so much of the theater space now is devoted to really big budget stuff because it plays well globally. And the Wall Street Journal had a story just in the last 2 weeks saying, if you look at the movies that generated the most critical acclaim, the top 10, they weren't in the top 10 box office receipts, right? So the top 10 grossing movies were not the top 10 critically acclaimed movies. There was zero overlap. And, go look what's out there. Like, everything's Disney, Pixar, or an Avengers movie. I mean, they got countless Avengers movies, like that whole Marvel franchise. It's half of what you see. So there does seem to be more of a shift to, either doing things directly for a particular, television buyer, or, for Netflix, with Netflix doing their own content. So even that's changed in the last 18 to 24 months, the magnitude of this thing. The other thing is with Netflix versus iTunes. Our first release, we came out on iTunes and like Hulu and Vudu and everybody that has those subscription services, Amazon. And then I think the next big release was Netflix, and then we just came out with a DVD. I'll do my shameless plug a few weeks ago. And, to some degree, there is not as much overlap across those markets as you'd think. But gosh, so many people have Netflix. It's in like close to 50 million homes. So they did a global deal. So once it got released, I'm seeing things in French and Dutch and, Brazilian or Portuguese, on Twitter, people commenting about this. And I'm like, wow, that's really awesome. But it's sort of like, if Netflix is the distributor and they're buying it after you've produced it, they have more leverage to negotiate than what you think you might. Like, you don't have as many other channels to go to, right? So what I would really like at this point is to see if our distributor can get it on Redbox, because we did do so well on Netflix in terms of the number of views and the trending. We were on the the popular list or whatever, and so I hope that they haven't sort of oversaturated it and not everybody's seen it. But the way they do the deals is that you get a flat fee up front, and that's the way it works for everything. So I would tell anybody that wants to produce a film, it's really, even if you got a great producer and you've got the capital for the budget and you've got some stars that are willing to work with you, try and have a buyer out of the gate before you ever get the cameras rolling. Because if you do things on spec, yeah, it can work out for you, but in order for that to really work out in a major way, you've got to like crush it at a Toronto or a Sundance, caliber film festival. That's sort of what I've learned in my crash course in the movie business over the last 3 years.
Yeah, I think the economics is interesting for me as well, because I have a friend named Tucker Max who created a movie about his life as well. But
I hope they serve beer in hell.
Yeah, that's right.
Yep.
Yeah, he was very unhappy about his whole situation and went in massive detail about why.
Well, he went theatrical, right?
Yeah.
He did it for release, yeah.
For us, I'm more concerned about us controlling our creative direction and brand image as a, big company, as opposed to, selling it. And my idea for whatever we would do is we would just also self-fund the whole thing, because we're putting out videos, like an hour worth of video every day on YouTube for free. And, I think when I met you, I was shocked that Netflix was paying you, because I thought that, I'd have to pay Netflix to get my content onto there. Even if I spent years developing epic material, because I'm just more interested in controlling our message and the story and the art, and that creative control is what I think is really important to me.
So what I would say in that vein, two things. We did get a good distributor in terms of the ability to shop it and negotiate it, and I think, barring having sold it up front to a channel, when you're basically they're working on commission to sell it to as many people through as many venues as they can, like our DVDs for sale on Barnes and Noble and Target and Walmart. So I mean, they've really accessed the channels. But the main thing is, you have to be a producer on the film, or you have to have complete trust in the producers, and then the directors. The directors have to know who they're working for, and you have to all be on the same page in terms of the vision and message you want to communicate, and ensure that you get all of the concerns worked out in the script before, weeks or months before you ever go to production. You got to make sure that everybody's on the same page with that script and you've all agreed to it. And then, yeah, things can change with the editing. It can certainly affect the tone, but that's, I think, the key issue, is to just get that script locked in, and to make sure that you've got producers that you trust with your life. I was very lucky because Autumn McAlpin, who adapted this for the screen, actually ended up serving as one of the producers. She basically learned how to produce a film while she was working under the tutelage of John Kelly, John's a unit production manager. He was on Deadpool. He did that movie Spy with Melissa McCarthy. I mean, he does very big budget productions. So it was neat to be able to entrust the story into the hands of somebody who had been passionately trying to get it made for 4 years before the cameras started rolling, and I really trusted her. So I think that's the big lesson, is find producers you trust, and find directors that share your vision and have a good reputation. It was a little, I will tell you, the one thing we were a little wary of with our directors was they had always written their own content, and so this was the first time they had ever collaborated and done something that wasn't completely proprietary. So we were a little bit nervous about the direction that they were interested in taking the film, but I think it worked out very well. And there was certainly some headbutting between them and the producers, but from what I understand, no more than is normal for the industry. And frankly, I'm happy for them, because they've got a film that's out now at South by Southwest, one that they wrote, starring John Hawkes, Octavia Spencer, and James Lafferty's in it again. That's just cleaning up and getting extra screenings down there. So it's kind of like, oh, I know people in the business, and it's just, there is this, seductive aspect to entertainment, right? Where it's just cool.
It's very cool. When you mention producers, are you also inclusive of the people that help finance everything?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be candid. I kicked in some capital. I'm a minority investor in it. One thing you learn is the semantics are not sort of set in stone. Because I contributed to it, they said, well, do you want executive producer credit? Even though I basically did nothing more than sign legal documents and write some checks, and then I consulted on the script. I found out that's a lot more than some producers do. You can just lend your name to a production sometimes and be called an executive producer. Some people do nothing but write checks without really getting involved with the script at all. They can get producer or executive producer credit. And then some producers are involved, down in the trenches, just doing everything. And none of that, necessarily comes out in the opening credits. You don't get a sense of who's really doing what lifting
based on the opening credits in a movie. That's interesting. It's also very surprising. It's good to know, though.
Yeah.
I guess for me, a lot of it is not just trying to figure out how everything works for film, but I feel like a lot of this is going to parallel for what I've already invested a ton of money and time into in terms of the musical that we've been building. I'm also really curious about what you're doing now and how you went full circle, because it sounds like you went from the whole financial world, the process of self-discovery, and then kind of ended up exactly where you started, but with a different kind of like this moral compass or outlook. In the movie, at least, that was. And in your situation, sounds like you also just went through this process of defining the sense of what happiness is for you. What happened after you went through this journey of going through Waffle House in real life?
Well, I'm glad that you frame it that way, because that's the way I like to frame it. So I guess the movie has done its job in that respect.
Okay.
Thank you for the feedback. At the time that we published the book, and I spent some time trying to market it, it was really another year, maybe 18 months, till I got back on my feet professionally. I thought I was going to be, an insurance agent, and I looked into that licensing process. I worked for a software company. They sold software, risk management software, ironically enough, for banks. So I was training folks at community banks on this software, and it was a good sort of interim job for a while. But I didn't really get back into asset management until about it was about 2 years after the events of the book ended, and I ended up working on the retail side of the business for the first time in 2012. And basically, like the film depicts, helping people invest their money. I was doing that more in an analytical role with some client interaction, but not as much as the film depicts at the end. And then we did a screening in my hometown, or my wife's hometown, and this guy came up to me afterwards and, made an introduction. And like, I don't know, 2 or 3 months later, reaches out to me and says, "Hey, I've got a registered investment advisory firm. I need some new blood and somebody to help me grow the business and eventually transfer this thing over to. Are you interested?" So we started talking, and I've been working there for 9 months, and it's great. So we'll see how that whole transition process goes, but it really has taken me into that client-facing role. So it's a case of life sort of imitating art, right? I was about halfway through that transition when the movie concluded, right? In real life, I was working on the retail side, but not dealing with clients. Now I see clients, every day. And hopefully, my name will be on the door in 5 to 10 years. At least that's what was presented to me. So I do get excited about that. But in the same breath, I think I have more, perspective philosophically. Just when you see people that have worked for years and behaved ethically and tried to do the right thing, and they still end up like losing all this money they've made through no, patent fault of their own, it forces you to think about what's important in life. Like, yeah, having money is cool, having your own business is cool and everything, but you can get blindsided by war, disease, financial panics, whatever. It's just none of us ever planned for that. So I think it's certainly made me more philosophical in that sense, and just more grateful, because I realize a lot of what I have, as much as it might be the function of the sweat of my brow, it's really just a matter of luck or providence that you get to keep it, because things can come out of left field. And now with this job, if it materializes, if things work out the way that they've been presented to me, it's an amazing opportunity. But again, I'm not counting my chickens, and I'm not letting my whole sense of identity get hung up on whether this thing works out.
Is it like the movie where it's the thing that you enjoy and would passionately do, even if you weren't paid?
Well, that was something the directors sort of wrote in. I will say that the depiction of the last day where he goes in and they talk at the park bench, mm-hmm. much of that was lifted verbatim from the last 2 pages of the book. And I'll shamelessly plug the book now that I plugged the DVD. You can actually read that dialogue on the last couple pages. Would you do it for free? that was the director's line, not one that the cook posed to me. But as far as doing something that you're passionate about and you love, absolutely that comes through, and that's been my journey. Because when I was writing the book, I thought, well, I'll just write all these, sort of anecdotes about these crazy happenings at Waffle House, but I wasn't planning on infusing any finance or economics in it. I was just sort of reading on my own, for my own edification and interest. And then it just found its way into the book. So I can't get away from it. It's too deep into my bones. What I do at pro bono, I'm doing work pro bono now. Actually, my cousin, I'm doing some work for her. So I am doing some of it for free. Would I do it full time for free? I've got a wife and 2 kids. Probably not the best idea, to do that without getting paid. But yeah, I think you have to be passionate about something really to be successful, because you have a lot of days where you're not going to get paid as well as you'd like, or you're going to face setbacks, or things are just going to blindside you, and you ask yourself, why am I doing this? And if the money's not there, what's the other justification? Well, you have to love doing it. And even if the money is there, if you read these psychological studies, money's a temporary motivator. You look at Warren Buffett, he loves investing. That's why he does it, and that's why a lot of people that have done really well in business, I don't know how many of them are truly greedy. They love the game. They're not. There are greedy people, but they enjoy the process of building and creating, right? Like, you clearly love what you do. You have a passion for it. You look at Steve Jobs, anything he talked about Apple or whatever. You've got to love trying to build something, and that's the beauty of it. That's the joy.
The passion that you put into making your story into this creative art, that's pretty awesome. I think that is something that I kind of feel about the project that we're doing now in terms of the musical, in terms of, and me even just trying to project my mind into the future and looking back and being like, oh man, it's over. Now I guess I have to do something else. And I guess I'm curious about how that feels for you. Or are you interested in continuing into this world of entertainment, or are you kind of interested in just pursuing this goal of staying in the financial world?
It's funny that you broached that subject, because I thought this was a one and done for me. Like, I've had enough adventure, right? I can tell you, I probably wouldn't want to write another book, just because it's an unbelievable amount of time and opportunity cost to write a book. Screenplays do not take anywhere near the amount of time and effort, and if you sell the screenplay, you can get a lot more money a lot faster with a lot less aggravation. So I've decided to keep my prose, to confine that to the Christmas letter and business writing, and Michael Lewis can write the books, right? I'll leave that to him. Awesome. Which, by the way, my former employer was mentioned by name in The Big Short. I got about halfway through that, and I saw the name of the CEO, and the guy across the hall is managing it, and I just closed the book and put it down and never opened it again. I still haven't seen the movie. I'm like worried I'm going to get all these bad flashbacks. But at my last job, when I got into the retail side of the business, I was talking with a guy at work, and he was telling me about these Iroquois brothers that have upended the world of college lacrosse. And he's telling me about this ESPN feature and all this. I thought, well, that's fascinating. So I started reading up on these guys, and I find out, we have some mutual acquaintances. So I start talking to them, and long story short, I end up co-writing a screenplay with the woman that adapted my story for the screen. We've got some pretty serious distribution people that would love to do it, and a major record company that wants to provide the soundtrack. So that's where we're at in this process. Everybody loves the script, and it's just something I've written on my own. I started working on it, I think, in late 2014, and we had the script done by, when was that? March of 2016. So not 16 months or so. And again, I could just do that part-time. So now it's the process of trying to get money and talent attached, and maybe do another production, another biopic about somebody else. I had no intention of doing another one, but again, if this door gets open and you see this great story, it's like, wow, so many people struggle to get into this business, and if you have the context and you've got the story and you've got the ability to write and you can put all these various pieces together, yeah, why not do it? You only go around once, and that's sort of the ethos I've embraced. Like you could take a course in life that's will certainly pay you more money in the short term, and there's a steadiness to it. But I mean, I don't know who you think about the big people in history, right? They're all explorers and innovators, right? Nobody writes about the bureaucrats unless they were involved in prosecuting some large-scale war, right? And so you have to decide early on, I think, in your career at some point, whether you just want to warm the seat and punch the clock and keep your head down and keep everybody happy, or if you want to go out there and do something unique, and whether you have the temperament for it. It's a question you got to ask yourself. And there's going to be fits and starts and some capital losses, but I think ultimately it's more gratifying, and people respect you for it.
Well, also, you were able to successfully make this first venture profitable, and I think that's pretty amazing, since most businesses, just of any kind, nevertheless a creative business that's as bizarre as the entertainment world, turning it into a profit in the first try is pretty awesome.
Well, we're getting receipts. Full disclosure, we don't know because we haven't seen all the receipts come in yet. So you get these statements, every quarter, and it's kind of like, you risk a reasonable amount of capital, not too much. The money's coming back, but you ultimately, I won't know for another 24 months, how well this thing has panned out. But even if I knew I was going to lose every penny, I've thought about it, in terms of what I committed to it. Would I do it again? Absolutely. And, you can second guess yourself all day because, it's created this other opportunity, which is like 10 times bigger than the last one. And it got me this job, which is also, again, just in itself, a huge opportunity. So I've had 2 other opportunities come out of this. So regardless of how well this particular project does, it's created this set of circumstances that, again, have opened more doors down the road for me. And it's a great thing to tell a prospective client, oh yeah, here's the book. Oh, and the movie's on Netflix if you want to watch it. Now, how many other financial advisors would say that? Again, I wasn't thinking about it when I did this. It's just a byproduct. So I don't look at it as just, one discrete project. It's like ripples in a pond, right? You throw the stone in and it's going to go to places that you never anticipated.
Yeah, that's cool. It's been really cool to hear your journey because I'm able to relate to you on both being a former RIA myself and then, working on this musical and going through the creative process. And I really appreciate you putting all this together and sharing with my audience. Thanks so much for doing the interview.
Well, I look forward to seeing your musical. Do you have a working title?
It's The Most Hated Men.
That's good. I like it.
And for a very good reason. Our company is both edgy, awesome, and contributes a lot of value. And I think that it's going to be pretty awesome. We're super excited.
Let me give you a few plaudits because I know there's some of these things out there that talk about like sort of coach guys on just how to spread your wings and meet and interact with women, and I had the great privilege to have a fraternity brother in college that really helped me out with a lot of that stuff because I was the oldest in my family, and my dad's not going to sit me down and teach me this stuff, right? And and there aren't many girls that date in high school, and I was so lucky to meet this guy when I did because it changed my perspective not only with women but with life in general and living it on your own terms. And I think it's great anybody that's out there teaching young men how to just take life by the tail and not be passive about everything and not just resign yourself to the status quo. I think it's great that you're doing that. Sure.
Yeah, I'd love to share offline, some of the ideas that we have since you've gone through the whole creative process. It'd be really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been a lot of fun too, and we have an epic team.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, once again, thanks a lot. I think this would be a perfect spot to end the interview. I'll put up a link to some of your ways you could get a hold of your book, and also where to check out your movie. And yeah, this has been awesome. Been mind-opening. Cheers.